The day 8 video is on dimensional analysis, which was unit conversions. For example, you could convert 12 inches for every foot into inches per yard, or 16 ounces per 1 pound could become how many ounces per ton. These are all the unit rates or unit ratios because they're equivalent, and they have 1 on the bottom. 12 inches is 1 foot, 16 ounces is 1 pound, and 100 centimeters is 1 meter. So when you multiply by this unit rate or unit ratio, you are not changing the value of the rate because you're multiplying by 1. Numerator and denominator of each of these unit ratios are always equal, so the value of each ratio is 1. And when you multiply by 1, you do not change. You are not changing the value of the fraction. Okay, so how do you do this? To convert one rate to an equivalent rate by multiplying by a unit rate or its reciprocal, when you convert rates, you always include the units in your computation. This process is called dimensional analysis. This was one of the hardest things we did last year, and we did it right at the beginning of the year. Alright, convert each situation using dimensional analysis. Use your reference sheet on the previous page to help you with conversions. Alright, so we start with the original rate. The original rate is 10 feet per second, and we're going to change that to inches per second. Alright, so you start by writing as a fraction 10 feet per 1 second. This is in yellow. And your goal, I like to think about my goal. I'm going to multiply it by some unit ratio, and my goal is to get it in inches per second. That is my goal. Okay, so what do you multiply to get it to become in inches per second? Well, it looks like the seconds are not changing. Okay, so you're not going to try to get rid of the seconds. What you're going to try to get rid of is the feet because it has to become inches. How do you get rid of the feet? You can cross cancel it. So I need to have feet go down here so that they will cancel. Okay, which means what I need to have on top is inches. And then if I look across, inches will end up on top and seconds will end up on the bottom. That's how I figure out where things go. Then I plug things in. Inches and feet. What rule do I know? If I look at my reference sheet here, inches and feet is not on here. It is one that you are supposed to know. 12 inches is 1 foot. And so I fill that in. And I get 10 times 12. 10 times 12 on the top is 120 inches. 1 times 1 on the bottom per 1 second. And that should make sense too because we originally had 10 feet per second. And each of those feet is worth 12 inches. 10 times 12 is 120 inches per second. This is your converted speed. A swordfish can swim at 60 miles per hour. How many feet per hour is this? Alright, so 60 miles per 1 hour. Okay, I know I've got to multiply it by some unit rate where the numerator and the denominator are the same, so it equals 1, so I don't change the value of the fraction. And then I need it to become in feet per hour. Alright, so how am I going to get it to become in feet per hour? Well, it looks like the hour doesn't change, so I'm not going to mess with the hours. The miles is going to need to be canceled, so it's got to go on the diagonal so that they cancel. And the feet needs to go on top because that's what I have to end up with on the top. Well, what do I know with feet and miles? That one should definitely be on here. Feet and miles. Okay, good. Because I'm like, that's not one that I want to memorize. 1 mile is 5,280 feet. One mile is 5,280 feet. The setup is the hard part. Once you set up, you do 60 times 5,280, and I get 316,800 feet per 1 hour. And so that's your new unit rate, but in feet per hour instead of miles per hour. All right, the Amtrak train travels at 120 miles per hour. Convert this to miles per minute. Okay, how is this one different than the other ones? Okay, this one I'm changing the time instead of the distance. The other ones I changed the distance, this one I'm changing the time. So in this case, the numerator stays the same. The miles isn't going to change, and the denominator is the minutes. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to keep the miles the same and get rid of the hours. So those are going to cancel so that you can end up with minutes. You want to end up with minutes on the bottom. Okay, do not put two different kinds of units for your unit rate. For example, you can't put in that second fraction hours and miles, because hours and miles are totally different kinds of rates. Hours is time, miles is distance. You want a unit rate for that second fraction where it equals 1. So if it's going to equal to 1, you have to have it be the same kind of unit, time or distance, or make sure it's consistent. You know that 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes, so that's your unit rate there. And so 120 times 1 gives you 120 miles per 60 minutes. That one, you didn't end up with 1 in the denominator, so you could divide 120 by 60, and you would get 2 miles per 1 minute. Either one of these is acceptable. One is written as a unit rate, and one is not. Okay, a skydiver is falling at a rate of 170 feet per second. How many feet per minute is he falling? 170 feet per second. That's in yellow. And then you want to figure out feet per minute. That is my goal. So it looks like, yet again, the time is what's changing and not the distance. So if I want to get it to become minutes, I have to cancel out the seconds by putting them on the diagonal, and I want it to become minutes. And yet again, I know 60 seconds is 1 minute. 170 times 60 is 10,200 feet per 1 minute. All right. Marvin walks at a rate of 7 feet per second. How many feet per hour is this? All right, so I want to get rid of seconds, and I want to make it into hours. Okay. So I'm going to cancel out my seconds. Here's a problem. Seconds goes directly to minutes. Okay. So how do I get to make it go to hours? You actually are allowed to multiply by 2 unit fractions. That is completely acceptable. So I'm just going to move this down. It's still all attached. Thought I unattached it. Okay. I want to move feet down and hours down. Okay. So I can also multiply by minutes, converting to hours, and then I'll be able to get feet per hour. So let's fill in what we know. We know 60 seconds is equivalent to 1 minute. And we know 60 minutes is equivalent to 1 hour. And then everything cancels except for the feet and the hours, which is what we wanted. 7 times 60 times 60 gives you, get my handy dandy calculator, 7 times 60 is going to give you 420, and then times 60 again, it's going to give us 25,200 feet per 1 hour. Okay, so that's an example of doing it twice. The peregrine falcon can fly 322 kilometers per hour. How many meters per hour can the peregrine falcon fly? This is an example of doing it with metric instead of customary. Kilometers is a metric unit, and so is meters. Okay. Something you should know is that 1,000 meters are in a kilometer. I'm going from kilometers to meters, so I'm going to try to cancel out the kilometers. I want to get rid of those and change them into meters. I know that 1,000 meters equals 1 kilometer. And so when I multiply, I get 322,000 meters is equal to 1 hour. Okay. Number 7 is a little tricky. A couple steps to it. A pipe is leaking 2 cups per day. How many pints per week is that? Okay, so I'm noticing that both things are changing. Cups is changing to pints, and day is changing to week. So I'm going to take it one step at a time. I'm going to take first cups. If you look on the previous page, you will find out that actually I don't usually do that. I find out that cups, so they cancel, changes into pints, and I know that 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. Alright, so I've got the cups. Now I gotta change days into weeks. Okay, so I want the days to cancel out, and I want it to change into a week. 7 days is 1 week. And so that's how you convert both of them. You have to have 2 fractions. 2 times 7 on the top gives you 14 pints. 1 times 2 times 1 on the bottom gives you 2 weeks. You could totally do 14 divided by 2 and get 7 pints for 1 week. This is considered to be the unit rate. This is considered to be an equivalent rate, another rate. Okay. The bottom one is really tricky. I actually had difficulty with this one because I knew, oh no, this isn't the one I had difficulty with. Never mind. 12 miles per 1 hour is equal to how many feet per second? All right, so we have to change both. We have to change miles to feet and hours to seconds. So let's go through and change away. First, I usually change the numerator. I'll change the miles into feet. And if you look on the previous page, you know that 5,280 feet is equivalent to 1 mile. Okay, so I've got the feet up there on top. Hours, I now need to cancel. Hours convert to minutes. 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. And then I need minutes to go to seconds. And I know that 1 minute is 60 seconds. So now I have feet left on the top and seconds left on the bottom. 12 times 5,280 is 63,360. 1 times 1 times 60 times 60 on the bottom is 3,600 seconds. And if you divide that, you will get 17.6 feet per second. So this is the unit rate, and the top one is an equivalent rate. Dimensional analysis, your guys' favorite.